is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Welcome back in another episode of the One World Away podcast right here on Kansas City Sports Network. Jordan Foote here with you, Joel Penfield, Josh Keiser, brought to you as always by Emprise Bank. Extremely grateful, the bank of KCSN, this podcast, the lab, everybody that is cool and important here at KCSN, and then somehow us as well. We're extremely grateful for Emprise Bank for supporting us, and extremely grateful for the pals to jump back on and talk some Royals baseball. We'll start with Joel. How's it going, man?
It's going good. If you guys are watching on YouTube, you see I'm not in my normal setup. I'm actually down in Oklahoma City visiting my mother-in-law. My wife's on spring break as a teacher, so we came down here for a few days. Caught a Thunder game the other day, and I got my one of my favorite beers that I cannot get in Kansas City that I was very happy to have as my my podcast beer for this evening. So still brought the stuff, brought my work laptop and everything, and just been kind of grinding away for a couple of days.
I like the setup behind you is like grandma is trying.
It's peak. Yeah, it's very peak. This is the TV room. So there's a TV right here. I got my air mattress is right there. There's a chair over here, and this has been my work setup for a couple of days. And it is currently 75-ish degrees in this room, so I'm dying. I'm sweating my ass off right now.
Oh, no.
No thanks.
The TV room. I love the TV room. That's some old school stuff.
Oh, yeah. Well, for a while, there wasn't a TV and there wasn't Wi-Fi, so we've upgraded a little bit.
That's a pretty serious upgrade on both fronts.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Producer Nick hits the chat. My grandma's the same way. She keeps that shit set to 78. My grandma is also a 78er, which I just can't imagine. I'm like 72 max during the winter, I think, is like the max comfortability max I can have.
You're a psycho, anything above 72.
Yeah.
I must be Mr. Freeze because I'm like 68, bro.
No, dude, there's some nights.
Not during the winter.
Yeah.
Summer, winter, spring.
I like that.
Maybe it is 68 degrees in this house.
My wife would in my sleep if I kept it at 68 during the winter.
I sometimes, like, during the winter days where it's like 50 or whatever, overnight, I'll just shut everything off and I'll wake up to it being like 59 degrees inside the house. I'm just like chattering my teeth as I walk to turn it back on, but it's so perfect. I love it.
One of the last things that I remember enjoying prior to kids is being able to have like an open window through the night and waking up to like 55 degree house. That's and now it's like sore throat. It's just bad news going on, so it's not even worth it.
Yeah, I'm battling a little something. I don't know what it is, but it might be because I did some shit like that the other night and did not have optimal temperatures. But we're going to talk baseball. We're going to talk the Royals. We did make it 3 minutes into the pod without touching on that. And really not the best thing to start off on, but something we missed last week. And I guess it is kind of a heartwarming story in terms of the timing of it. Tyler Duffy came into camp and went through like his physical, and this was from Annie Rogers of MLB.com, did a really, really good write-up on it. He had like a spot on his shoulder and talked to the team dermatologist. Let's try that again. And it was melanoma, which is like a very big jump from, I have this little bump or spot, whatever it is. Pitched on the 26th of last month anyway, then had surgery on the 27th. And now he's got like stitches in his back and his shoulder and cleared for light baseball activity last Wednesday. But I had no clue. Both of his parents had cancer and have passed away. So like that was a really unfortunate part of the story, but just the way Annie put it together. And I strongly encourage you, I'm not doing it like a tenth of the justice that it deserves. I think it's just really well done. How he was just so appreciative and making the most out of that. And how I believe there was a Q quote in there too about how like, I'm a manager, these are baseball players, but we're all humans, stuff like that. I believe it was Joel that mentioned it during the week that we should touch on that. I think that's a perfect kind of, obviously baseball related, but bigger than baseball at the same time.
Yeah, it's absolutely a bigger than baseball situation. And we're glad that they caught it when they did before it got really serious. And in fact that he's able to already go back and start throwing again is something that I don't even think he was expecting. There was something that might have, ended his season perhaps. he had talked with the dermatologist and the doctors, and it was like, okay, I have this thing. Like, what am I going to do? He's like, can I pitch? He's like, well, it's going to be there whether you pitch or not. So he's like, okay, I'm just going to go throw. And so he threw his inning, and then he went and got the procedure done. And, for a guy and he was a non-roster invitee, it wasn't a guaranteed thing. So it really was a love for the love of the game sort of thing for him in that game. And, hopefully he's able to, maybe throw later this year if all goes well. And maybe he's in Omaha, maybe he ends up in Kansas City, and, what a story, and hope for continued good health for him. And hope this doesn't last too long for him.
This segment brought to you by Kansas City Dermatology. No, it's serious. Go get yourself checked. Go get yourself checked. It's totally worth it. And I mean, if it's something that needs to be acknowledged, it needs to be. But if not, and you have a peace of mind. So go get yourself checked if you got those problem areas, and that goes for inside and outside. Go take a check.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous in a crazy way. Like how sometimes people are just like, oh, it's just blah blah blah, and then it turns out to be something like way crazier, or you think it's something really insane, and then it's just something simple. Like the human body's weird. Health and wellness are both weird. Doctor visits are weird, but kind of destigmatizing that and like go and get yourself checked. Like Josh said, if you're feeling out of it, there's no natural transition, but we'll jump to spring training roster moves. The Royals kind of have been trimming down the roster a little bit. Monday, Jonathan Bolin got optioned to AAA, Christian Chamberlain and Tyler Cropley to minor league camp. Chamberlain, obviously, the torn UCL. That was kind of a procedural move. Steven Cruz and Will Klein optioned to AAA. Rodolfo Duran assigned to minor league camp. Sunday, Diego Hernandez and Beck Way sent to minor league camp. And then on Tuesday, the day that we're recording the show, Tyler Gentry and John McMillan both optioned to AAA. So I'll kick it back to Josh first. Obviously, a few of these guys were, whatever, shoulder shrug, like they were going to get sent down anyway. I guess you could technically say that for the bulk of this list, but at least for me, there's definitely a couple guys that jumped out.
Oh, for sure. I was the first one to lose like a roster projection guy, obviously, with Bill Klein. I kind of stuck my neck out and thought that, made the bold take. I was so brave to pick Will Klein's awesome upside to make the opening day roster. And alas, like it was, 4 days later that he was optioned to AAA, which I get it. I mean, he's got upside. He does have some things to work on. Steven Cruz as well. But I like both of those guys, obviously. And Jonathan Bolin is also a name that we definitely recognize here as Royals fans. But the big ones today, at least John McMillan was kind of a surprise to some, I think.
It was a little bit of a surprise, but because he got such the late start at camp, he was banged up a little bit early on after pitchers and catchers reported, so he had a little bit of a later start getting ready, so he's not going to be ramped up in time to be full go by opening day. So send him down to Omaha. He's going to be one of the first guys up. I would not be shocked if he spends the vast majority of the season in Kansas City in the bullpen. Just a situation where he's just not going to be ready to go where he needs to be in the bullpen for the Royals on March 28th.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and people always make a big deal about the opening day roster. And like if you're a contending team, maybe it makes a little bit bigger of a deal. Like the Royals in 2024, not really going to matter that much. Like this team, every team's going to look a lot different because of injuries, because of guys that just either get sent down due to having an option or because their performance is bad or both. Like John McMillan's going to be up. It wouldn't surprise me to see Tyler Gentry factor into some picture or race at some point. Jonathan Bolin obviously still kind of working his way back, if that makes sense. Will Klein, the Futures All-Star Game, whatever like the official name of it was last year, like the Royals representative. These guys are going to be factoring into things in some capacity. It's not a big deal that they're not going to be breaking camp with the team or anything. So nothing that's a red flag, nothing really that's even a yellow flag. Just wanted to mention some guys, and I think, Joel, you have one more thing on that, right?
So we've talked a lot about what the bullpen could look like throughout the offseason with a lot of these young guys that got some time at the end of last year, Cruz, McMillan, MacArthur specifically, but there were some other guys. Then they brought in some veterans like Stratton, Will Smith, Nick Anderson, Schreiber later on. But we figured there would still be a good mix of veteran versus young guy rookie types. But with Klein, Cruz, and McMillan going down to AAA to start the season, it seems like it's a very veteran bullpen now, really outside of James MacArthur and Matt Sauer. Roster Resource on Fangraphs has the bullpen fully out as James MacArthur, Will Smith, John Schreiber, Nick Anderson, Chris Stratton, Josh Taylor, Sam Long, non-roster invitee, but he's pitched really well. Adds a third lefty to the bullpen, and then Matt Sauer. So a lot more veteran laden than maybe we thought, especially last week when we did our projections. We kind of had, I think, probably about 4-4 of veterans versus young guys, and now it's closer to 6-2 in favor of the veterans. Which I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's very important to have those veteran types at the back end, a little more trustworthy than maybe Steven Cruz or John McMillan might be. But very interesting to see how it all works itself out at the end, and that seems like most where we're at right now.
Yeah, down to 54. We got to get to 26. So we got some guys to trim here, but yeah, it's going to happen.
Yep, opening day is going to be here before we know it. The Royals are, though, playing spring training games. In the meantime, they, since the last time we recorded, beat the Cubs, lost to the Mariners, had a game rained out, beat the Rangers, beat the Diamondbacks, lost to the Athletics, lost to the Giants, and then made up, I believe, the game that got rained out against the Rockies, lost 4-2 on Tuesday. I just had little box score stuff. Brady Singer had a good start last, I guess, Tuesday that would have been. Seth Lugo looked decent against the Rangers. Vinny Pasquantino and Nelson Velasquez had a big game mixed in there. Angel Zerpa a little bit up and down. Singer got shelled a little bit in that second start. Just these again are SSSs. You know what that stands for by now with this podcast. I just have a hard time, and maybe this is bad on my part, but getting too involved with the spring training stats. This just doesn't do anything for me quite yet, and it probably won't until we reflect on everything after it's already over.
Well, if you have a hard opinion on a player, whatever happens in the spring training game confirms your priors, and we're excited, or we're see, I told you. But if it's a player that you like and they're playing poorly, it's small sample, and we're not going to worry about it. So that's just how spring training games go.
Yeah, I will say two things kind of stood out. Alec Marsh is now starting to make noise for potentially that fifth rotation spot. We talked about pretty much all spring training that it was down to Jordan Lyles and Daniel Lynch. And I think Alec Marsh is doing everything he can to make that a three-man competition at this point. We'll see what happens. I don't know how much of a chance he's got at taking that spot away from those two, but it's going to kind of depend on Jordan Lyles. Ooh, we got a co-host in.
Yeah. You want to say hi to the guys?
No, or
no. All right, buddy. That's my buddy. That's my buddies Josh and Jordan. We do a podcast talking about baseball.
What's up, dude?
Say hi. All right. Can you shut
This is great podcasting, I think.
Cool. My son, for those watching on YouTube, my son just walked in the room to say what's up and did not realize I was doing a show. He's normally asleep when we record, but we're at grandma's house, so bedtime.
Not a grandma's house.
Not a thing. Yeah.
Not existing. Yeah. So I think Alec Marsh did it a little bit.
Yes.
And I think, speaking of roster resource on Fangraphs, there is a new DH in town, according to roster resource. They now have Nick Prado making the opening day roster over Nelly Velasquez. Nick Prado, was that Sunday's game or Saturday's game with 2 for 3, the home run, a walk, and a strikeout. But very interesting that he is now projected to make that opening day roster spot. I think someone might have been saying that the last couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it was probably
the same guy that picked Will Klein. Probably that guy.
Hand up accountability. I kind of been dunking on Nick Prado for a couple of weeks.
I have too.
Yeah, with new information, I can change my opinion. He's been awesome. And I hope that he's able to carry this over into the regular season, because we've seen it time and time again, and this is not exclusive to Prado, where guys have an awesome spring training, and then they just pee down their leg the second the regular season starts, and we see nothing that we saw in spring training. So cautiously optimistic. But if he makes some legitimate changes to his approach and he's a little more aggressive, more willing to, put the ball in play rather than just try and work a walk or, whatever, and he's able to tap into the power a little bit more, then he certainly deserves to be on the opening day roster.
Yep, he definitely seems to. He's not taking many walks, and he's not striking out, and he's reaping the benefits from it. So I think that he is doing something. Today, Cole Reagan's got a little knocked around. It was the first day of StatCast, and I wish we didn't have it for this start. I think the myth and the lore of Cole Reagan's in spring training, it took a little bit of hit today, but not worried about it. It is what it is. It's spring training. We're not going to worry about it.
The velocity was still there. He was still throwing all 5 pitches, so it could have been a situation where he's just working on sequencing certain pitches, and he was just getting rocked. Now, I did see him he left a couple 98-mile-an-hour fastballs right down the dick, so that's not ideal. But
he was having trouble locating, it seemed, early, and then he kind of found his groove. So I think that's par for the course, I think.
Yeah. No, 100%. We have been, I don't want to say neglecting, because I don't think that's fair to us, but we haven't been spending as much time as we've necessarily wanted to on prospects. And now MLB Pipeline has released their top 30 list, so we are going to talk about some of our top prospects and kind of react to that list right after this break.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
Thank you guys for tuning in. If you are listening on Apple or Spotify, be sure to leave a review. Only if you like the podcast. If you don't like the podcast, don't leave a review. Just joking, by the way. We appreciate all feedback. YouTube comments are great. Likes and subscribes are extremely appreciated. Just like we appreciate Josh and Joel and producer Nick for helping us out on the show, and Tucker, the content manager. And I think I got everybody. So the Royals prospects are farm systems in an interesting spot, because some people are like, prospect system sucks, the farm system's terrible, they don't have any good players. Some people are like, okay, well, it's like for any NBA fans, it's like the 2024 NBA draft class. There's no can't miss prospect. Like, there's a bunch of decent players. You're like, okay, if I need a role player, I can go get this guy and he'll be on my team for 10 years, whatever it's going to be. The Royals don't have, I want to say they're getting closer to a mix of like some high-end talent, some projection, and also a few guys that have a fairly decent floor. We're going to try our best to cover that to the top of our ability here. How do we want to handle Pipeline? Do we want to read the whole top 30, or do we just want to pick out what jumped out at us for that?
I'm good with reading 30-1 real quick. Just for like reference, like as a reference point before we go into our lists and any of it.
Okay. Do you have it pulled up? So you want to do it? I have it pulled up too.
Sure. Yeah, I got it pulled up.
Okay.
I'll go 30 on up to 1. So we got Tyson Guerrero, Henry Williams, Daniel Vasquez, Eric Sarantola, Hero Wyatt, Steven Zobak, Peyton Wilson, Hunter Owen, Matt Sauer, Noah Cameron, Trevor Warner, Will Klein, John McMillan, Carson Rocafort, Javier Vaz, Ramon Ramirez at 15, Anthony Veneziano, Austin Charles, Chandler Champlain, Carter Jensen, Tyler Gentry, Yandel Ricardo from the most recent J2 class, Gavin Cross, Blake Walters, Mason Barnett, Frank Mazzucato, Ben Kudrna, and then 3 through 1 is Caden Wallace, Nick Lofton at 2, and then Blake Mitchell, last year's first-round pick, at 1.
So now that you've got all of that in your system, going through your brain, bouncing off the little waves up there, marinating a little bit, you could say, Josh has 1 up on that, or I guess 2 or 3, maybe even 4 up on that, because he made an aggregate ranking. We're not going to go through Keith Law's top 30, Baseball America's top 30. We'd be here for a while if we read everybody's, but with Pipeline's list being out, we do now have a better idea of how and where every prospect ranks. And Josh, I don't want to steal your thunder, so kind of what sparked that interest? Did you notice anything too crazy? Did something jump out? Do you think that like having 5 things to break down makes a good composite ranking?
I mean, these are all people that do it full time, and they've done it for years. So that's better than anything that we're going to be doing, I think, at this point. A shout out to Farms and Fountains, shout out to Roy's Farm Report. Those guys follow the minor leagues harder than just about anybody in the Royals fan base. And we also have 4 national scouting websites that are devoted to the minor leagues. So a lot of great content out there to follow the minor leagues, but I wanted to kind of aggregate MLB Pipeline, Baseball America, Keith Law, and Prospect Live's top 30 lists. Their top 10, starting at 10, Carter Jensen, Frank Mazzucato, Chandler Champlain, Gavin Cross, Blake Walters, Nick Lofton, Ben Kudrna, Barnett, Wallace, and Mitchell at number 1. And I think by far the thing that jumped out to be was Barnett at number 3. That was kind of a new name.
Very surprising.
Not necessarily new, but a name that you haven't been seeing on lists very often. So the fact that all 4 of them aggregated into a Mason Barnett fan club between the 4 different rankings was kind of surprising to me. But that was the major one that kind of jumped out to me. But yeah, that's why I did it, and that's what their top 10 was, and it's very interesting to me.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to look before we jump into a personal. The one that really jumped out to me was Frank Mazzucato, and only because everyone else had him top 5, and then Prospects Live had him 35th. And I'd like to,
and I should caveat that too. I'd put 35 because he was outside their top 30, but still needed to be aggregated in that. So I went 35 instead of 30. So they just didn't have him on the top 30. I don't know where they had him. I still
find that remarkably interesting. Like, I'm not saying it's wrong. Like, obviously we all have him much higher than that on our list, but like, what went into that? I'd like to sit someone down from there and say, let's hear your logic for that. Because that dragged down the ranking quite a bit. Because like, if he was, let's say 11th or something, he'd be, aggregate 7 or 7.5, and he'd be a few spots higher. But also the fact that there's a 35 on there and he's still one of the top 10 players in the composite ranking is kind of a testament to where everybody else sits on him.
100%. Yep. I wanted to look into why they were so low on him, and I've got theories, but I think it comes down to a lefty that doesn't have the velo that you want, has command issues, or is still a prep pitcher. So
I mean, there are just as many things to like about Frank Mazzucato as there are red flags. Like, they're almost equal. Like, the fact that he throws a fastball with a decent enough shape at IVB that it's like, okay, even if he doesn't have velo into the mid-9s, the fastball is still going to ride and play. The curveball is awesome. A decent feel to pitch, but the command issues are real concerning. And if he's not going to throw more than 91, we got problems. And he's still young, but he's super lanky, so I have durability concerns too. Like, there's a lot. I'm a little lower on him on my list too. So not 35 low, but like lower end of the top 10.
Yeah.
Like, I think we have him at 10. I have him at 8. So I want to see it before I want to jump him back up into the top 5. He showed a lot to be excited about last year, and then he went to high A, and it was a nightmare.
Well, they kind of chalked that up to the collision he had there.
Yes, that did not help.
It was practice, wasn't it? He wasn't even a game.
It was batting practice, and he collided with a dude trying to catch a pop fly. Yeah.
Yeah. And that apparently messed with him. So I can understand why things kind of took a little bit of a downturn there. But I think it all relies in where he can get that extra velocity. Like you mentioned, he is pretty lanky, so there's room for projection with it. But I'm curious to see what he looks like this year.
Absolutely terrible podcasting on my part. I guess I should have brought up how we want to break down the top 10, because like, obviously we have some overlap, but also a few spots that are a little bit different. So like, if we all listed our top 10 and then picked out different guys, we could just scratch off Frank Mazzucato's name from everyone's list because we already have him. Like, I think the easiest thing to do is one of us gives their top 10. Like, we'll have Josh give his top 10, and then we'll like eviscerate Josh and say, well, I had him ranked here. And then if there's anyone that we have that Josh didn't have, then we circle back. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Good.
Okay. Josh, go ahead and rattle off your top 10.
So before I do that, I want to add some context. I took pretty much last year's sample sizes, where they were at, how old they are. So kind of contextualize that a little bit, and then put in kind of a risk factor on top of that. So I tried to put in one big soup of contextualized data into the I guess my rankings here, but I went Blake Mitchell at number 1. I went Carson Rogafort at number 2, and we can talk about that, I'm sure. Gavin Cross at 3, Caden Wallace at 4, Mazzucato at 5, Carter Jensen at 6, which might be too low in my opinion, but we'll see. Number 7, Mason Barnett. Number 8, Javier Vaz. Number 9, Nick Lofton. And number 10, Tyler Gentry. Fire away, boys.
Let's talk about Roccaforte at 2. I like Carson Roccaforte a lot. I think he's going to be a pretty solid player. He's got a good high floor, I think, given his ability to play center field and the contact. I think it is good enough and some power. Enough power to play and speed. But I could not justify having him at 2. So I'm curious what you think here.
When I came out to it, and I told you guys this when we first talked about it, is I think his floor is just about as safe as anybody in this system. And all of that is dependent on him staying in center field. I don't think he has the bat to keep up in left field. He definitely doesn't have it in right field. But if he sticks in center field and does what he does, he's got a good plate approach. He's got good bat to ball. And it's hard to deny what he did last year in a half a season. So he was 22 or 21 in A-ball. So he was a little bit older in A-ball for that, but I feel like it's more about how high his floor is as opposed to what his ceiling could be.
I like that. And we all value different stuff. So if you value floor more than ceiling a little bit, or you think you might want a little bit more of a sure thing, then obviously Roccaforte's going to be higher. And I think when we do superlatives later, he's going to pop up a time or two. It's just a name that's going to be recurring. I'm not trying to spoil it, but just so you know, I have him 8th on my list. I like his profile a lot. I like the player a lot. And really, we're all collectively higher, I think, on him than most prospect lists have been. You look at the aggregate ranking, not doing too hot. He's 16.5, which is still okay, middle of the pack. But even on the pipeline list, he is 17th, so it's kind of consistent. I just think really the combination of being able to draw a walk, having plus speed, playing a damn good center field, I trust the bat more than it seems the prospect sites do, and that's not arguing against them. It's just, I think he brings a professional approach to the plate. I think he puts bat to ball well enough. The power is kind of the hinge, pivot skill, I guess, that could raise or lower him on a list. But if there was any prospect where you'd be okay, can this guy get into the bigs and make an impact? I'd be Carson Roccaforte could do that. Could he be Kyle Isbell? He's not going to defend like Kyle Isbell, I don't think, but could he give them that level of value? I think he could, and it's because the bat's going to be better. You're going to lose a little bit on defense, but you're going to get some on the base pads, I think. And that's not to say he's a slouch of a defender. I think he's pretty damn good out there, but just not the fringe elite that Isbell has been, which is a nice, pleasant surprise for the Royals. But I like Roccaforte. I have him 8th, and the only other major discrepancy, I'm trying to look at both of ours, and they're not sorted, obviously, because that's impossible for 3 people. I have Nick Lofton 4th instead of 9th. I think that was a weird one to begin with because he's already been up there, and he played, 20 games last year, whatever it was. So you're he's still a prospect, but also not regarded completely in the same realm as the other guys. So I think Lofton is the only major difference. I had Roccaforte 8th, like I said, so that was a little bit lower. I had Ben Cooter as 6th, and you had him 11th, and Joel had him 3rd. So I guess we can get back to Lofton here in a second. I think that the thoughts on him are far less original than they're going to be with Ben Cooter. Josh, let's hear your take on why he's outside the top 10. Then I will give a take on why he's middling, and then Joel will give a take, I guess, on why he's really high on him.
I think the main hit on him is just his 4-seam is just kind of okay. Pretty mid, because I think the breaking ball and the off speed, the change that he throws, and the slider that he has, both pretty solid, and his command issues are pretty reined in. So I think his floor is pretty high, but if his velo is only a 93, 94, now he's just 20 years old, maybe 19. How old is he? He's 21. Sorry,
yeah, so he just turned 21. So he'll play this entire season, potentially in Double-A.
Yeah,
he'll get to Double-A by the time he's 21.
Yep. So if he bumps up that velo, comes to camp with 10 pounds more on him, is able to bump that up to living in the mid-90s pretty regularly, I think he could absolutely start jumping into that top 10, if not the top 5 at that point. He might be the safest pitcher in the system at that point. But I just want to see that before I'm able to kind of get hurt again, if you will.
Yeah, no, I think like the last 4 games of his high A stint where the ERA was like 4.57, he was averaging 5 innings per start. Like, seemed like he was settling in just a little bit, had 15 strikeouts. It was better. The fastball definitely is the key for him, and that's my note. It's like he has to get the most out of the fastball. My ranking is contingent upon that happening. If it doesn't happen and it looks the same, he's dropping for me because I just don't think that you can have tremendous success like that. And yes, you can pound the strike zone. Yes, you can be aggressive. But if the fastball's not good, you're going to get hit around. Mm-hmm. And like the command is not elite enough to counteract that, or even great enough to counteract that. So I'm a believer in him maximizing that pitch as much as he can. Now, it's still not going to be very good, but can he get by with everything else and still be a pretty decent prospect? I think he can bounce back a little bit there, but it definitely, you can tell I don't have a ton of confidence that, that he's going to justify the rankings. So I'm like, he's middling in my top 10. I still like him quite a bit, but I can't put him much higher than 6.
You brought up a good point. Is there anybody in your top 10 that you are confident that that's where they fit in the system?
I put Blake Mitchell 1 by default.
That's my only one. That's the only one I was like, that's.
And then Lofton because he's been up there and he looked decent, and I always believed in the profile. Like, other than that, dude, Roccaforte, that's about it. Yeah.
Because it seems like it's deep system of guys that might be on the fringe. There's not a lot of guys that are.
A lot of guys need to separate themselves.
Yes.
I think that's going to be the biggest thing by mid-season. So I had to continue the Kudrna conversation. I have him at 3. And I know that seems ridiculously high compared to where you guys have him in other sites. This is a bit of a spin zone. You talk about the fastball. That's almost the least of my concerns because it's not common, or at least you don't see it super often, that these prep righties that come in have a really good feel for spin. Like, he has a great feel for the slider, the curveball. That he developed the changeup, I think, in like instructs. It was not something he threw very much as a prep. And then he got to Columbia in 22 and was featuring it. It became his second best pitch immediately. So the fact that he has a really good feel for secondaries tells me he has a good feel for pitch and kind of being able to add and subtract velocity during a count, not just relying on the fastball like a lot of guys that get drafted. Like, at his status, those guys usually have mid-90s fastballs that they are able to just blow by high school hitters with no problem. They don't have to worry about throwing a slider or a changeup or a curveball. Mm-hmm. They have to learn that stuff in pro ball. He's kind of the opposite. So if he can get in the lab and maybe tweak the pitch a little bit, get a better shape on it, then he's probably going to be okay. But the fact that he has that ability to throw the slider, the curveball, the changeup in any count and be confident with it gives me a good feel for the pitcher and not just the thrower. You know what I mean? So I think 100%. I think that raises his floor pretty significantly, having that feel for 4 pitches, even if the fastball isn't spectacular.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I'll rattle off my top 10, and then we can kind of keep it. I'm sort of chalk in some spots, and then have maybe a couple surprises on the back end. Number 1, Blake Mitchell. Number 2, Gavin Cross. Number 3, Caden Wallace. Number 4, Nick Lofton. Number 5, Frank Mazzucato. Number 6, Ben Kudrna. 7 is Mason Barnett. 8 is Carson Roccaforte. 9 is Carter Jensen. And then 10, I have let's try that again. 10, I have Javier Vaz as my rounding out the top 10 prospects. And I believe Joshua, my friend here, he also has him top 10, which is kind of neat.
I like Vaz's floor. I really like his approach. I think he's got good skills that will translate. But again, it's about power. I think it's a similar issue with like Tyler Tolbert. It's a similar issue with Nicky Lopez when he was around. Like, the approach is definitely there, and that's going to raise his floor entirely. But if he's not going to be able to put some pop on the ball, then I don't know how I don't know how much you're going to be able to succeed. I mean, guys, who was the Nick Madrigal drafted by the White Sox, went to the Cubs. They talked about how good of an on-base machine, how good of a hitter he was coming out, and he had no pop. And they wasted like a 3rd overall pick on him because of that. So that's just always been the red flag for me. What's that?
Because he never struck out. Like, that was the other crazy thing. Right. It wasn't just the contact. It was the fact that he didn't swing and miss. Like, it was like Stephen Kwan kind of has that ability too. But like, there's no power to speak of for Madrigal. So, and I think when he gets to pro ball, Javier Vaz is going to be like second base only. maybe a corner outfield spot in a pinch. So that lowers it too. At least like Michael Massey's pretty much second base only, but he has power. Like there's at least another carrying tool that makes you kind of eat the second base only part. If that's what Javier Maz is, like there's just not, like it feels very Nicky Lopez-ish. I think he's a little bit better than Lopez. He's got a little more power, like at least to the gaps to be able to, and a little more speed to where he can make it work, you know?
Well, and if that's the profile though, is that the number 10 prospect in the Royals organization? Like if he's going to play solid defense and he's going to give him good speed and he's going to be, I'm just a sucker for guys that can hit and bring a patient approach to the plate.
Yeah.
And like not strike out a lot. So he could prove me wrong this year and look silly with the numbers. But there's another guy later that kind of similar to that also doesn't bring power that I want to talk about, but he's also not even close to the top 10. Do we want to jump to anybody else in that list?
I want to talk about Caden Wallace. I want to know what your guys' thoughts on. He was high on the aggregate list. Was he number 2?
Yes,
he was.
Yeah.
4th on mine, 3 on Jordan's, and spoiler alert, 4th on Joel's. What do we think about Caden Wallace?
I don't really like Caden Wallace as a prospect that much. Like I just didn't. He was almost by default. Like I thought any list that didn't start with some combination of Mitchell, Cross, Wallace was like
automatically defunct.
Kind of, but like also the Cross thing, and we can talk about him with the year that he had. I almost want to give him a pass for it. Mitchell, again, by default, and then Wallace didn't really do anything to completely sway me away, but also didn't do anything to convince me, like, man, this guy's going to be really good. Like, just kind of there last year. So, high A really well. The double A stint was underwhelming, but his strikeout rate went down almost 6%. So I'm like, okay, he showed a little bit of promise that he's going to adjust well, looked good at the hot corner. Like, my opinion on Caden Wallace is unchanged from when they drafted him, and I don't know if that is a good thing or a bad thing.
In his defense, he should have been a junior at Arkansas this past year and got to double A in his first year of pro ball. They got him as a draft-eligible sophomore, so that it was a lot more like raw clay to work with a few tools that, you know, play up a little bit more. And I think there's still more power potential in there. He can be that more traditional, you know, decent glove, power third base type that maybe pops you 20 home runs, 25 in a good year. I think that potential's still in there, but I want to see it in double A before I really dive headfirst into thinking that he is the big league third baseman of the future. But I think the tools are there for him to be that guy. I want to see it in double A. I think he'll be 22 for the entirety of this year. So that gives me reason to believe that he can kind of be that guy.
Yep. I found myself just being like, he does a lot of things really good, but it doesn't seem like there's anything that's great yet. And I want to see that great. That's a good point to be like, that's a guy that is the second best prospect in the system far and away, bar none. I want to be able to jump to Caden Wallace in the midseason and be like, look what he's doing in Northwest Arkansas. He's banging down the door to go to Omaha. And if there's some kind of deal with Michael Garcia, Nick Lofton, that third baseman has not been, filled for the long term, I want to see Caden Wallace go get it. So, hey, he, like I said, he's doing a lot of good things. I like a lot of things about him, but I just want to fall in love with him.
Can we breeze over Nick Lofton? Like, I feel like we've already said a bunch about Nick Lofton. Okay.
And I'll be honest, I almost left him off my list purely because
exactly.
Going to be in the
and it's nothing against him.
No, it's nothing against him. It's almost like, so when I did the prospect rankings, we did the top 50 of Royals Farm. We left off anybody that had any sort of big league time. Like, even if it was just a handful of games, like we were like, look, they're going to be in the big leagues. We don't need to put them on a prospect ranking. So I almost left him off for that reason, and it wasn't an indictment on him. It's just he's going to fall off a ranking here pretty soon, and that number 2 spot's going to be up for grabs. But that's my 2 cents on it.
So we hit on Carter Jensen a little bit. I think we are all impressed by his approach is one of a kind. Like, just the ability to draw so many walks, and the strikeouts are a little bit high, but still, I'm not worried about them personally. He stole 11 bases. He hit 11 home runs. The BABIP wasn't very good. I think that has reason to improve. He pulled the ball almost 50% of the time. I think he's going to start to show some of that middle of the field ability and spread the ball a little bit. I like him a lot. 3rd round pick in 2021. I have him 9th. Josh has him 6th, and Joel has him 10th. So we all like Carter Jensen a decent bit. Looking at the list, Blake Mitchell, we all have him 1. Mason Barnett between 7 and 9. Gavin Cross, I think, is worth mentioning. And then Blake Walters seems to be a very, perhaps most polarizing guy on this kind of list, right?
So it is. So I have him 2 behind Blake Mitchell. So I had the first 2 picks from this most recent draft in the top 2 of these rankings, and I'll just go ahead and talk about it because I have him higher than pretty much anybody else, and I understand.
Sure.
And I have a take on this too, though, that I think we'll get to later with superlative stuff. Mm-hmm. But listen, like I was very critical of the draft picks of Mitchell and Walters when it happened. Not because I think the players are bad. I think there are good baseball players and potential big leaguers in there. It's just the risky draft profile that worries me. Prep catcher, prep righty. It just, the hit rate on it is concerning. But then I saw a video of Blake Walters this offseason popping 100. And I've seen the videos of his slider. And he absolutely eviscerated. He was a dude from Wake Forest, Brock Wilken, in Drugs.
Yes, yeah.
Bullied the crap out of him.
Bullied it. Yeah, like, that's the right word.
Okay. I was like, okay, I'll make a note of that.
You have my attention. Yeah.
Yes, and then our good buddy Jack Johnson from the Night Shift, he was boots on the ground, Locked on the Royals podcast. Be sure to check that out as well. Daily Show, shout out to that guy. He was boots on the ground in Surprise early on before the game started. And from everything he heard and saw about Blake Walters, it's some of the best stuff in the system. It's the best fastball in the system, according to Paul Gibson. By all indications, he's going to go to Columbia right away. And he's 19 years old. He's going to be 19 for this entire season, which is interesting because the last couple of times the Royals have taken some of these prep kids, they've kept them back in Arizona for a couple weeks, for a couple months sometimes.
Yeah.
And then they send to Columbia. Yeah, then to Columbia. That's what they did with Masakato, Kudrna, and Panzini. But if they're going to send this kid right to Columbia, they're pretty confident in him, that they think he can be that guy. And listen, like Masakato, the curveball's great. Midnight, low 90s, high 80s fastball. Kudrna, it's mid 90s on a good day. Panzini, it's low to mid 90s. This kid's upper 9s right now at 19 years old.
Already.
We have not seen a fastball like this in the system from a prep kid in a long time. So there's a lot to dream on, and this is really projecting of what he can be. But we just haven't seen a dude with that type of stuff as a high school kid in a long time in this system. So I may be dreaming. It may be I may fall flat on my face with this prediction, but I have him too because you just can't teach 100, man. And if you're 19 years old throwing it, it's pretty good. There's a lot to dream on, man.
In full disclosure, Joel had him at 2. I had him at 21. And I think I agree. I agree with everything you said. The fastball is something to dream on. The slider is already nasty. He needs to work on the third delivery, but
the changeup, which has been an emphasis for him, according to stuff I heard. So
yeah, which again, I don't think he was throwing much his senior year of high school either. So he's still trying to.
It's like the antithesis of Kudrna, like I told you. Like, yeah, sure. He was pretty much, yeah, you're blowing 97 by a kid. Why would I need to throw my slider? Like, why would I need to throw a changeup? Because it's what I have is working. So there's a lot. But if he can develop that changeup, like if it's even if it's a 50, fine, because the fastball's a 70.
And at that point, you could probably dream on him being a badass reliever pretty simply.
Yes.
Yeah. And if Major League reliever is the floor, then he should already probably be higher on my list. But the risk is definitely there. And that's kind of why he's lower on my list. But I am dying to see what he's got.
Yep, I've got him in my next 5 in no order. Blake Walters, Anthony Veneziano, Tyler Gentry, John McMillan, and Ramon Ramirez. That's my next 5. I guess on the way out here, before we do superlatives. Sorry, I lost the list. It froze on me. Go ahead, Joel.
Okay, I think we need to talk about Blake Mitchell a little bit. Like, I feel like we're bearingly not talking about the number 1 prospect except in passing.
Where it's like, oh yeah, he's up there, whatever.
He's up there. Well, he's up there.
That guy.
Now, I have my concerns about that for prep catcher thing. It's the same reason I have reservations about Carter Jensen. I think the kid's awesome, and the approach is awesome, but I have him 10th because he's a prep catcher, and I just don't know. There is something that I really like and appreciate about Blake Mitchell, and to give another plug to another Royals show, shout out to Royals Weekly, Mike and Marcus have been down in Surprise. They got some awesome backfields footage of batting practice, and they showed some open side clips of Blake Mitchell just hitting moonshots. The old scouting adage, if it sounds different off the bat, like you heard some of those collisions and it was like, damn, okay, I understand. But what I appreciate about Blake Mitchell is the approach and the swing and everything that he's doing, super mechanically sound, super simple, which is really awesome to work with if there's things that need to get tweaked. There's not some weird, hitch or load, where the bat is all over the place. Like it is load straight to the ball and he's just hammering it. Mm-hmm. The concern I have on the flip side of that is, okay, if it's that simple, I worry about the swing being grooved, which by that I mean, if you miss middle end to Blake Mitchell with a fastball, yeah, he's going to crush it because that's where the swing goes. But if it's not there, is he going to be able to make contact? Mm-hmm. And there are contact concerns with him. That was one of the hangups with him as a prospect, is the power is undeniable, but is he going to be able to make enough contact to get to the power? So there's kind of the conflicting thoughts of, okay, the approach is super, and the approach and swing is super simple. But is it too simple to where it's just one pitch, one spot? So that'll be something to watch early on if he goes right to Columbia, is what is he going to be able to do and how does he adjust to guys hitting all four quadrants of the strike zone? Is he going to be able to get off of the pull power and be able to just shoot balls the other way and become a complete hitter?
Yeah, I think... Go ahead, Joel.
Okay, the only things I have with him and Cross, I'll just kill two birds with one stone. Until they give me a very legitimate reason for me to move them off their spot, Cross, I am giving a most pass for last year. And Mitchell, if Mitchell comes out and stinks up the joint, I'm like, okay, well, yeah, he's really young, but something might have to give it. If Cross doesn't hit the ground running or at least get going quickly, a lot of mine is like subject to change on like June 1st, mid-June, where I'm like, okay, these guys didn't get off to the impressions that I wanted them to. And I have a lot writing on that with my list, but I do have Mitchell 1 and Cross 2 just because I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, which I probably shouldn't necessarily be doing, but that's just kind of the philosophy that I try to have.
Yeah, the prospect pedigree just doesn't disappear seemingly so quickly. I know that once you get into harder competition, that stuff can really start to, the cream rises to the top at all times. But yeah, both him and Cross both play premium positions and are special bats that if it does hit enough to make the major leagues, the other parts of their game, the power, the approach, the defensive ability is all there. So if just a little bit of that hit tool clicks for either one of those goes, they could be special / franchise pillars that could really be beneficial to this team. I think they're both extremely high risk, and you want to see more from both of them. But I think they both could become those players still. It's just not, the ship has not sailed on them by any means. So they both definitely have some more to prove, especially Blake Mitchell only getting so small sample size there in Arizona last season. He walked a ton, struck out some, didn't hit any home runs, which is what everybody wanted to see. So they got some work to do, but I think at this point it's really where it needs to be.
Yeah, if I could play devil's advocate to the contact concerns on Mitchell, there were concerns about Bobby Witt Jr. as well. Like it's almost identical. That like, yeah, the power is there, but is he going to be able to make enough contact? And people looked way too hard into his, similar to Blake Mitchell, the complex thing. Like Witt hit one home run. There was some strikeouts. He wasn't walking a lot. It's like, man, is he really going to be that guy? So
did he turn out to be okay?
I think he's got 288 million reasons why I think he's a pretty good player.
I was jacked up today because StatCast, this is a tangent, but StatCast today was for the game. But Bobby Witt, I don't think he made contact with the ball that didn't go 100 plus miles an hour.
He's dialed in right now, man.
He's so dialed in.
Like, and his swing, and this is a complete aside, and we'll get back on track in a second. When they've showed the clips of his home runs this year at spring, he's got like that one-hand finish. You just know he crushed it. He's never done that before. He's been two hands on the bat the whole way. So, like,
he knows. He knows now.
He knows, man.
Yeah.
He's
really like, this is my franchise. I'm that guy.
It's wild. Like, sometimes you see it kind of click in stages for guys. We have a true moment where it all clicked for that guy. And it was the walk-off grand slam. Like, we can look back at that moment and be like, that was it. That's when he knew. That's when we knew. Mm-hmm. It's kind of wild that we all kind of had that moment.
He reminds me. Yes, he reminds me, and they obviously play different positions. They're different players. I don't know why. There's something Mike Trouty about him. And, like, maybe it's just because he was one of the first faces of the franchise of, like, my teenage years, I guess it would have been. But, like, Trout, something about it. And I just, there aren't really similarities with them that I can really think of. It's just a gut feeling where I'm like, I watched that guy, and I think the way he operates, the way he carries himself, the way, like, the franchise gravitates towards him. And you could say that about insert franchise shortstop or whatever, but there's something, even with Trout being in the outfield, something about it. I don't know.
Yep. I for some reason I thought you were going to say Derek Jeter, and I was going to get really upset.
We can have a Derek Jeter talk another day, and I will make you guys kind of upset, I think, but we do have one more prospect to hit before superlatives.
So the top ranked pitcher that we have is on the composite rankings was Mason Barnett. Now, I have him, I believe, at 9. Both of you guys have him at 7.
Yeah.
What I thought my reasoning for having him that low, because I'll be honest, I just kind of fired from the hip on mine. Like, I was pretty confident in having Walters in that top 3. Other than that, I was like, I'll just kind of fill it in because there's not like that game-changing guy like we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
But for Mason Barnett, I'm like, okay, the stuff's pretty good. I don't know if he's a reliever or a starter. He's kind of an like older prospect. Maybe he's going to be 23 for this entire year, and he's going to be in AA, maybe AAA. So he's knocking on the door. How do you guys think he fits in? Because I don't know what to do with him right now. The strikeout stuff is legit. I just haven't seen enough of him, like, film-wise, because it's kind of like there's some access issues with MILB sometimes. And I don't know what to do with him quite yet. Maybe by May I'll be able to have a better idea.
And that camera in Northwest Arkansas stinks, so you can't get a good run.
They haven't replaced that thing since 1997.
And it looks like it's always just misty and foggy there. I don't understand.
And it's not.
It is what it is. The fastball and changeup is really good. I think that plays and makes his floor. I think we've got him in there right because I think he's got the best combination of floor and ceiling. I think he's got the safest floor with the ability to, if he learns how to, throw the breaking balls a little bit better. He's got a curve and a slider, but neither one of them are fantastic. So I think that's really what's going to separate him is if he's able to distinguish between the two. I believe both of them are pretty close in velocity. So I think if he's able to distinguish between those two and make them a little sharper, I think that, the sky's the limit for him. We can see him in Kansas City for sure. But I like it as where he is placement in the system among the pitchers because he does have a pretty good combination there.
Yep. Josh, you hit the nail on the head. I wrote in my notes that he just needs one of the slider curveball to separate from the other. And that doesn't mean one has to get worse, but it does mean one of them has to get better. Be utilized more advantageously in different situations. I believe he also has a changeup somewhere out there that exists. We just haven't heard too much about it. Just wait and see mode with him, but I do like the stuff he can offer. Let's do superlatives before we get out of here. We don't really have nuggets of the week. We don't have too much to look forward to as far as alternate content to close out the show is concerned. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 6 different superlatives to go through. We can do a little bit quicker of a pace with this one. Biggest sleeper. Joel, I'm putting you on the spot, so I hope you're ready. Who's the biggest sleeper right now in the Royals farm system?
Ooh, let me check the rankings because I hadn't thought too much about this.
I can put this on Josh, too.
Yeah, I can give mine.
Okay.
I got Harold Wyatt.
That's exactly the name that I got to. Yeah,
I thought about him.
He's 27th on the aggregated list. They got him in the third round of last year's draft. He already has a great fastball shape. The velo is there, the shape is there, and a very good slider. He's a third pitch away from popping on radars pretty darn quickly, and I've got it on good authority that the Dodgers were very interested in drafting him at the draft. So if the Dodgers on him because of his fastball shape, I am in on him because of his fastball shape. So I think he's the biggest sleeper at my book.
Joel, do you want to ditto that one?
Yeah, I ditto that one.
Okay.
That was the name that I got to as I went down the list. I'm very excited for what he's going to do. I think he might be the guy that they kind of slow play to Columbia.
Yeah.
But once he gets there, he and Walters in Columbia could be a problem.
Mm-hmm. I think I have a type, and I kind of hinted at this earlier in the podcast, but I have Peyton Wilson as my biggest sleeper. He doesn't have any power. That's just a element, and he brings a professional approach. Again, he plays good defense. He has a very compact frame. He's a smaller guy, 2023 in AA, 108 WRC plus, 10% walk rate, 18% strikeout rate, 19 stolen bases. I got a very visceral reaction from one Josh Keiser when I said that pick. I don't think he's a top 10 prospect. I don't even think he's a top 15 prospect. But I see no mentions of him, and I think he is an okay prospect. That's not a ringing endorsement at all. Good Lord, for biggest sleeper? Are you kidding me? But yeah, that's
If I were to give you another answer, I think Hunter Owen could be that as well.
Yeah, that's a good one.
He's
a big fella,
lefty.
Isn't he?
He's a big dude,
but
he throws everything well. He's in the zone pretty consistently. A Vandy kid, so he's going to be a pretty decent guy. But could be a fast mover just because the floor is so high. Could get to AA by the end of the year type because just the secondary stuff is so good that he's going to absolutely bully dudes in Columbia and Quad Cities.
Let's snake draft it. I'm going to take highest floor to start off. I've got Carson Roccaforte. We already talked about him earlier. 27 games in A-ball, 377 on base percentage, 116 WRC plus. He walked 16% of the time. Good defense, good speed, good bat. I think it's a pretty easy pick for me.
I like that pick. I think it's probably who I would have gone, but for the sake of being different, I'm a big Carter Jensen guy. I love his eye. He's still young for his level. He needs to stick a catcher in order to hit for me. But that elite eye with the good pop, he's an adjustment away from being a top 100 prospect, in my opinion.
I'm going to go a little off the beaten path. It's not a guy that was on any top 30 list, and I kind of think it's crazy that he's not. But I'm going to go Jared Dickey, who hit 347 in a small sample in Columbia, 156 weighted runs created plus. Power didn't really come for him, but he feels very Tucker Bradley-ish, where he's just going to hit. I don't know how much power is going to be there, but he's going to just keep moving because the dude is just going to put the bat on the ball. And I like him a lot. I was surprised that he was left off the top 30s, even just on the back end, at 28. I thought he probably deserved to be in that spot, but he'll probably go to Quad Cities this year and just hit because that's just what Jared Dickey does. I mean, instead of Tucker Bradley always hits, I think I'm going to change it to Jared Dickey always hits. It's probably what it's going to end up being.
I got Jared Dickey as 29 and Tucker Bradley as 30 in my personal list. So that's very interesting. You brought both up in the same breath.
So we're going to snake it back with most upside. And I already talked about Blake Walters, and that kind of goes without saying. But the guy I'm going to talk about is Trevor Warner, who is around the 20 range. If you want to talk about the guy that could be your power-hitting third baseman of the future, it's that guy. There is legit 25, 30 home run power in there. It's just a matter of is he going to be able to, sustain it and not strike out a ton. But he hit 8 home runs in a small sample in Columbia at the end of the year. He can handle third base well enough. If he doesn't strike out a ton, that could be the guy that moves up a lot very soon.
I had Trevor Warner, so I'm trying to stall and think of someone. I'll just default to Will Klein, who I default to pretty often. There are concerns with him. He needs to hone in his command. I think the curveball and slider are decent secondaries. The wipeout fastball obviously has really big strikeout upside and really practicality so far. Big frame. Been working a lot in the offseason. Love when people post videos. I don't think there's a correlation between like post videos equals I believe more that the prospect is going to make progress. But when they do post videos, I do believe in the alleged progress. So I like Will Klein. I think he has really dominant back end reliever upside. Confidence level in him doing that, not very high at all. But for lack of a better pick, I can't go like Frank Mazzucato. I just don't believe in him being a top starter with the lack of fastball velo and the question marks. So I'll go Will Klein and feel remotely confident about that pick.
This is where I took the slam dunk. I think the most upside is Blake Mitchell. Obviously, we talked about him a little bit. He's a polarizing pick, easy power. But I just feel like all the reports that we've got is a very mature skill set behind the plate. He's a great receiver. He's got all the intangibles of a leader. So if he's able to hit it all, a left-handed catcher that could really be a team leader, a field general, you got a new roster pillar stone at that point. So I think Blake Mitchell has the most upside. He just got to tap into it there. And to kind of move on there, I think Trevor Werner is my most likely to rise up the rankings moving forward. Same reason Joel was saying he was 24th in the aggregated list. He was a stat filler in the half season there in 2023. Big power, good approach. Feels like he could be on a Vinny Pasquantino path. The guy who he's a monster on the field, kind of goes under the radar, but he just hits and hits and hits until he has to be acknowledged. So I think Trevor Werner could absolutely be on the rise in the rankings moving forward.
I had Trevor Werner back to back. I was like, I like the upside, and I also think that I believe in the upside. So the backup would be another copycat. It'd be like Carson Roccaforte, where he puts up a really solid season, and we're like, oh, this guy actually can play baseball. Let's move him up the rankings. But like, I had to improvise once. I'm not doing it again.
Yep,
I'm sticking with Werner Roccaforte, and I will let Joel Penfield go with his most likely to rise up the board.
It's Blake Walters. If he goes to Columbia and hits it off right away, like I'm telling you, and this might be a hot take. I don't know. I think by midseason you're going to see him at number one in some spots.
Yeah,
like in the system.
Wow.
If he is as advertised and the fastball is legit and he is showing some feel for a changeup, there's a good chance I put him at one at midseason. And by end of season, it might be damn near consensus that he is that guy in the system. And that's not to say that Blake Mitchell can't be awesome. Mm-hmm. And it's not like it's Blake Mitchell's going to end up sucking and that just by default it's a Walters or a Cross or whoever else. I just think Blake Walters could be that good that it doesn't matter what anybody else does.
I had Walters in here originally, but him being like 7th on the aggregated list, there wasn't a lot of room for him to rise up, but I totally agree with everything you say.
All right, let's get out of here on most likely to regress. Josh, we'll kick it to you first.
I'm going. I thought we were snaking it.
Okay,
so
we got lost.
I'll come back. So most likely to regress, I think it's gonna be Frank Mazzucato. I worry about the fastball velocity. That's the biggest thing. And now, if he comes into, I bet he starts in Quad Cities. If he goes to Quad Cities and he's consistently 93 to 95, I'll back off of that. But if we hear reports that it's still 90 to 91, then we're in Foster Griffin territory again with a first-round pick.
Ditto.
Yep.
Literally everything Joel said, that was my pick.
He's already falling on some lists. I think Prospects Live already threw him out of their top 30 completely. So that's definitely on the list. I think the other one is Austin Charles. So far, he's 13th on our aggregated list. Not a name that we've covered tonight, but he was taken 20th round of the 2022 draft as a prep. He's a big-bodied, two-way player in the height of the Shohei Ohtani fever. So I feel like he got a little bit of a boost in prospect pedigree. I like him. He's very raw, but I do think that his time is kind of running out. That pedigree and that shine's going to be a little bit diminished. Scouts graded his power at a 50 to 60 range. He had 3 home runs and a 356 slug in 300 Columbia plate appearances. So I could totally see him falling off the list entirely if he doesn't, rebound off of that. Still like the kid, still very raw, still a good athlete, still could go be a pitcher. But as of right now, he's a hitter that I think could be falling off a list by midseason, I think.
I dig it. I'll get us out of here, at least starting to get us out of here. Biggest mover at this time next year, I think it is going to be Tyson Guerrero, who was 30th in Pipeline's rankings. Didn't play a ton at AA last year. pitched really, really well at high A, 84 innings, 106 strikeouts, 41% ground ball rate. I like the fastball slider duo. I think fine-tune the curveball, work on the changeup a little bit, get that mix going. The problem is he turned 25 in February, so like if he's going to cook, he's got to get cooking quickly, or else he's going to be the dreaded really, really old prospect who's just beating up on younger prospects that he should be doing. So Tyson Guerrero, if he has a big year, then maybe rises up to AAA, could see him get like 20th or something, which would be a 10-spot jump and really more of a byproduct of being ranked low to begin with than necessarily being a good prospect.
Someone get Noah Cameron to tread, because that dude can absolutely spin the ball. He just needs to get some more velo, because he is a monster and he could absolutely turn into something if he just gets a little more velo. So shout out Noah Cameron on that.
I'm going to go with Emmanuel Reyes, who was in the Dominican League. He got a little bit of time in the complex and at Columbia last year. Decent fastball, really good feel for spin with the changeup. He'll be 20 by midseason, but I think he's a guy that really could move up rankings if it all starts to click for him, which would be a huge win for the Royals because they have not had many guys to come out of the Dominican with much success as of late, really since Giordano, to be honest. So this would be a huge scouting win for the Royals if he turns into something.
Big agree. Well, boys, we covered prospects, we covered spring training, we covered a little bit of everything. We are going to be back next week. We're in a little bit of a gray area between opening day and obviously prospects and a roster projection. So we will be back with something. We're going to talk about the Royals and what's going on in spring training, maybe a transaction or two between now and then. So we greatly appreciate you tuning in however you did. And until then, we'll talk to you next week. Thanks, guys.